All right, we're back. We are GAME1014, and it's the summer 2017 semester. We're week 6, part 1 of our broadcast. We're talking about a couple things today. One of them is I put a few PowerPoints on. I want to talk about the exam. What's going to be on the exam next week? What's the format going to be like? All that kind of stuff. And then we're also going to be talking about some of the PowerPoints that I put up on Blackboard. Just from a schedule perspective, just to recap, next week is our exam week, and then we have an intersession break, and then we start talking about alpha. Really, there's this week and a couple of weeks, and you're into alpha build, right? It's really a short time frame for if you haven't gone and done any work between the last time you did your first playable and we've seen each other. You're kind of in deep trouble. There's lots of stuff to do between now and the alpha release. All right, so a couple of announcements. One is I will not be here next week, right? I have another conflict that's occurred. It wasn't in my plan. But what I'm going to be doing instead of doing a traditional exam is I'm going to make sure you get a take-home exam. That's what's going to happen, which is a good thing. It's going to relieve the pressure from some of you. There's going to be like about 50 questions I'm targeting for. Might be a little less than that. Again, the exam is worth 20% of your final grade. I will allow you to, again, take home and do it anytime during the day next week between 9 a.m. And 5 in the afternoon. So anytime during that time, you can start the exam and finish. It'll be due by 5, which means you got to be finished by 5, right? So you can't start at 4:30 and then do your exam by 5. It'll just close out, right? So the latest you will be able to start is 4. It'll be I'll give you an hour every time you do it, and I'll give you 2 tries. Right, so if you don't do it the first try, then you have a chance to do the second try. I will take. No, I'll just tell you your percent.
I was gonna say a little too much.
Might be too easy, right? So, which means you can use all the resources you want, and I'm going to close one eye to get you guys to do what you have to do, right? A group in the earlier session asked, like, could we do it together as a group? And I'm like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, right? So, in other words, do what you want to do. I recommend. I want you guys to sit with each other to, it won't be maybe in this room because this room would be locked up, but you guys could go at any other place and do it together. From a critical response perspective, I know I've been criticized in terms of doing this kind of stuff before, and they said, some professors said, well, I'm not understanding because, you're letting the students kind of, do the exam and it's an easy exam. But at the end of the day, you got to go through that's got to go through your brain a couple of times, right? When you look through it. So at the end of the day, for me, it serves its purpose, which is you reviewing the material, right, so that it doesn't kill you, and that that some of the stuff we've talked about goes in and out of your brain. Again, this is an intro course, so so I think it's okay. Now, does anyone have any issues with it? If someone has an issue with taking the exam remotely, then I would have to make sure that there's a proctor and then that you guys bring your student IDs and that you only have 60 minutes. You have to be here at 1 o'clock. If you want to, I can do that, right? But if you don't want it, right, then if someone says, like, for example, I really don't like doing it, I won't do the exam. Like, there are people who I give all day to do the exam, they'll start at 4, right? So please, it's up to you. If you don't do it, that means you didn't show for your exam, right? I will make an announcement to this effect. It'll be up on Blackboard. Is that a hand? Yeah.
Wait, so you have to go into school to do the exam?
No. Take home exam. Do it from home, right? If you want to meet with your team, might be a good exercise for you and your team to get together, a good time to get together with your team to work on your alpha, right? The exam will only be an hour, so you'll only have an hour to do it. So if you all start the exam together and get it done, right, you have a chance to work on it for the rest of the day, and then it'll be a chance to get together and do what you have to do, right? Any questions around the midterm? Again, we're 20%, and it's next week. It's take home. Yeah.
Sorry. What's the span? Like, how much time do we have to do it?
1 hour. You'll have 60 minutes. It'll be around 50 questions.
So, like, the date from when it's open to when it's closed.
From 9 o'clock in the morning it'll close at 5, but the latest you can start it is at 4. All right. Make sense?
Monday to Friday?
Friday. Next Friday.
Oh, it has to be on Friday?
Yeah.
Is it multiple choice?
Yes. Multiple choice. True. False. Yes.
Will the questions change the second try, or they say?
Yes. It'll be random every single time. I got to make it some kind of challenge. Come on, right? Might as well. If I made it the exact same, it's like you can.
Tell you your marks. If you should bother doing another try?
I believe it will. I think I can set it up for that. Yeah, and I'll put it in a list format instead of no backtracking and all that, so you can
Yeah.
go back and redo your questions, right? So that'll reduce the amount of requirements for doing them at the try. No, I'll allow you to backtrack. Well, because it doesn't matter. If you look at a question, now, not everyone will get the same questions. If I do a pool of 70 or 80 questions and you only get 50 of them, that means there's a good chance you may not get the same questions as the guy next to you, right? So can you still, quote unquote, cheat? I guess you could, but you'd be cheating yourself. At the end of the day, this is a knowledge check as well as a bit of evaluation. Like, do you know what you're supposed to know? And you get 2 tries. So if you can't do well in 2 tries, something's wrong, right? And it's a good chance for you guys to study. So that means you could literally do 2 hours. You could take 2 hours to do you can do the exam twice, right? And then if you didn't do well the first time, you can try it again the second time. Some people in the past, what they've done is they've done really crappy at it in the first try round, and then went for lunch, had their lunch, came back, and tried again, right? It's perfectly fine. I'm okay with that. But let's not make it a whole day thing, eh? All right. The other reason why I'm giving you a second try is, and this happens sometimes, you're connected, and then all of a sudden the internet drops, right? Internet drops, you get 0. I'm not going to be available to reset your exam that day, just letting you know, right? So the 2 tries are for you to, just in case something happens, right? Again, I'm only going to take the highest attempt anyway. Okay, so that's the exam that's coming next week. What's on the exam? It's the stuff we've talked about to date. Anything we've recorded on the lectures, and anything that I talk about today is fair game. I want to start off by talking about something new, a new topic today. I was going to have a little presentation, but it looks like this group in front of me is pretty much decimated, I would say. So we're waiting for a couple of other members to show up. If they do, that's great. If not, we'll have to think about strategies of how I can incorporate Emma into another group. That might happen, right? So let's talk about this personality stuff. Part of it was when we first started talking, I didn't have a chance to talk to you guys about team building, right? One of the topics in the course is team building and how to work with a team. And this is one of the major, I would say, topics that you have to take away from this course. It is a goal of this course to work with the team. This is the exercise, right? We've seen how the positives and negatives, right, of working within a team environment. Sometimes it can be a lot of pressure. But one of the tools that I've always used, and I'm not going to say that I consider myself by any means, see if this is going to crap out. I guess I'm going to see the wrong thing on the slides, but yeah, maybe I should just come out of that. Use slideshow. Let's see if I can do this. Yay, that's better. Oh, but now it's looking at me, and that's bad. See, that's what I'm saying. Once I start doing this, once I start going down this road and I swap displays, then it does something weird, like look at me, which I don't want, right? So I apologize. Let's just share the whole screen again. This is the problem when you're broadcasting. Anyways, so the idea here is that the hell? The idea here is when we're working with a team, you really got to figure out who you are and who they are. And I was saying this morning's class, if I could tattoo something on my sleeve, like on my arm, right, and add something to it, like a saying, it would be "Know thyself," right? It's a Greek thing. I know people are like, Greek thing, know thyself. It's kind of a Buddhist thing too, I heard. Know thyself is in Greece. There is an arch in Delphi which says "Notho seafton." That's the ancient Greek way of saying it, which is know thyself. And you can't really know anything about anybody else. You can't even love anybody else until you love yourself. We know that. I'm not really a psychologist, although I kind of practice this micropsychology, if you will, a little bit. It was taught to me back, I would say, a good number of years now, about 7 or 8 years, this system. And I've done several talks regarding this kind of stuff when it comes to business and entrepreneurship and project management. Those are the things that this really hits. You may see it again in some form or another. You may have also heard of the whole Myers-Briggs personality kind of test that they do, MBTI. This is kind of like that, where it breaks down your personality into different types. But the great thing is that this is a visual display. It's colors, right? So it's good for mnemonic. And what I want you to take away from today is a new language. When we talk about personality type, I'm going to talk about being a red or a blue or a yellow or green, a primary color. And then I want you to be able to take away from it. So when we talk a personality type, then we understand what we're talking. We have a common language we're going to be speaking about when we talk about describing a person. Now, this is great from everything from creating your own stories. If you're going to use this as a, I would say an archetype, right? You can create your, a complicated person with this personality thing if you really want to role play. But really the tool is for understanding yourself. So what does it do? Really the way it works is it breaks down personality in how you want to get your way. Do you get your way in an indirect or direct way, right? How you respond to others. Are you reserved or outgoing, right? From a pacing perspective, do you like a steady pace or is it okay if it's crazy, right? And finally, when you deal with details, are you detail-oriented or are you disorganized, right? So how to be successful in this thing? Really, it's first understand yourself. I'm going to ask you this on the exam. Hint, hint. It's coming, right? Or one of the questions could be one of these. And then once you understand yourself, who are you from a personality perspective, then it's easier for you to understand somebody else. You can't understand somebody else if you don't understand yourself. And as a young person, most people who are young in the room, there's some older people too, you may not understand yourself yet. And so you may think, well, I'm every personality type. I can fit into any one of these slots. If you're one of these people who thinks that, there's a couple of options. One is you're a chameleon and we don't know it, right? Or you really don't know yourself, or you're not being honest. And honesty is really important because sometimes when it comes to these tests, you might want to feel bad by writing things like, I really don't care about people, right? That might be a question that comes up on the test, right? You're like, God, I don't want to put that down because I feel guilty. Don't feel guilty. Be honest. The more honest you are when you take a test like this, if you ever do it, the more accurate the results. So what are the types? So really there's fiery red. This is how they described it. Sunshine yellow, really bright yellow, earth green, and cool blue. But if you just remember it as red, yellow, green, and blue, right? It's almost RGB, right, for programmers with a yellow. You get the idea of how it works. And when you first start analyzing a person's personality, like your own, okay, so you're first thinking about your own personality. What you should start thinking about is, am I extroverted or introverted? Now, what do those terms mean if you don't know? Do I get energy from being on my own, introverted, or do I get energy from being with other people, extroverted? Where do I feel comfortable? That's the first question you should ask yourself. Ask it of yourself now. What do you feel more comfortable, extrovert or introvert? Okay?
I wouldn't say either. Like I said, at times I
Where you feel the most comfortable.
There's always hybrids. Some people are exactly half and half. It's no longer a black and white thing. Like I don't know why.
Okay, stop talking now. You're stealing my lecture. Stop.
Right. Still inspired.
Stealing my fire. I'm gonna go there, man. I'm gonna go there.
Okay.
But if you were gonna sit in,
science.
no. If you're gonna sit, this is actually proven. This is a research stuff, right? This is not. I'm not making this up. All right.
This is type A, type B personality.
This is not type A, type B personality. You just have to wait and listen.
Okay.
So stop talking. Yeah, great. Thanks. All right, now here's the other thing. You can do thinking or feeling, right? So think about yourself when it comes to thinking or feeling, right? So think about the circle here that we got. On the right side of the circle, you're extroverted. On the left side of the circle, you're introverted. The second thing you look at is, are you organized or disorganized? If you're organized, first person, you're on the top part of the circle. If you're disorganized, generally you're on the bottom part. Now you might say, I'm kind of organized and disorganized. Yeah, okay, you could be. But the idea is, the first thing you think about is where you mostly sit. It's not exactly always. We're not talking about every situation all the time. Where you mostly sit. Okay, so that's the first thing you do. And this is the exact same thing when you look at somebody else. You look at somebody else and you go, is the person an extrovert or an introvert first? What do I see? How can I detect them? Are they comfortable speaking with other people? Are they someone who wants to be, are they introverted? Are they quiet? Like, what can I detect from that person? Right? And the second thing is, Are they organized or disorganized? Their thinking, their way of doing things, their methodologies. Are they organized or disorganized? Those are the two things you should think about, all right? The other thing is, are they touchy-feely? Is the person touchy-feely, or do they like keeping their space, right? If they like keeping their space bubble, they don't want you to come too close to them, that you feel that there's like this space around them that they must maintain or you must maintain, as an example, that's another indication that you're probably in the top part of the circle if you don't like to be touched. If you like to be touched, chances are you're on the bottom side of the circle. Now hear what I'm saying, chances are, and I'm talking about primes, but what we're also talking about, hold back your comments, but what we're talking about is primary colors. Nobody is one color, okay? Which means you could be a red, blue, green, yellow. It could be, right? If I was going to classify you in the system. Now there are 72 personality types, archetypes that this system kind of outlines. Is it 100% accurate? Hell no, but it does cover 96% of personality types from what they say from the research. So there are some personality types that can't cover. There are some people that we call the spokes of the wheel, which are personality types that are a little less common, right? But anything is possible. Don't think about these big blue and red areas as you're only red or you're only blue or you're only green. That's not possible. We're all colors. But the thing is, think about a blotter, like a bingo blotter. Ever go to bingo and you have this like thing that kind of, or you take a marker and you just go crazy on a wall. And if you have different color markers, one for red, one for blue, one for green, and one for yellow. And if you were to say, well, every time I have a preference, I put a mark on the yellow or the red or the blue section or whatever, that's what we're really doing. We have personality preferences. And there's these little, almost like islands of preference all over the place, right? Which means we might have a little bit of yellow and a little bit of blue and a little bit of red, but we'll probably have more red preferences than blue preferences. That's what we're talking about. Do these things shift around? They do, right? But here's the challenge. If you're someone who's a green person, and we'll talk about what that is in a second, right? And you have to do a red person's job. So at home, you're resting green, and then you have to go and do a red person's job, you know, during the day. There's an energy shift, is what we call it, right? Where you shift your energies from being green, which is more caring, to red, which is more directive. And this can cause something called stress or anxiety in your job. So an example, a person who I pushed to be a producer, right? Going back to, you know, brass tacks here, and who really doesn't have the personality for it, could be in a stressed situation, right? That's why I asked you guys to pick your own producers. So what are the personality types? So think about a red as more of a focused person, a directive person. That's your type A, classic type A personality, if you're going to type AB. But your type A or your aggressive type is your fiery red. They focus on, they're task-oriented. If I'm going to say primary red, okay? We're not going to say he's red or she's red. It's primary red. That person's probably a red blue or a red yellow or a red, you know, something else, a red green. Red green is more rare. But they're a combination of all the colors in a specific order, usually in terms of preference, how they prefer. So they could be an extrovert-introvert, or an introvert-extrovert, or an extrovert-extrovert, or an introvert-introvert, depending on how they land. Okay? So, and that's just from a primary, secondary color combination perspective. But we're all extroverts and introverts, just different levels of extroversion and introversion throughout our personality types, which makes it very complex, right? Remember, this is a system. This isn't life. This isn't us organizing and looking at someone going, oh yes, well that person is absolutely red. I mean, you could say that, but it's not really accurate. So think about a person who is red. Their motto is, hey, let's do it now, right? I want to do it now. That's the action person in your group, right? And if you're a yellow person, it's more like, let's do it together, man. Like it's togetherness, right? Green person, let's do it the caring way. And then the cool blue is, let's do it right. Let's do it by the books, by the numbers, right? If I had a motto, if I was going to talk, if the red was going to talk about something, if you asked him what his motto would be, it might say something like, you know, be brief, be bright, and be gone. Tell me the 30 seconds. I got no time for you. I got things to get going on. I'm very busy, right? That's your red personality type in general. The yellow person wants to be involved. The green person is, again, all about caring and inclusion. And the blue person is about details, process, order. If I was making a D&D character with these personality types, the lawful person would be the blue, the chaotic person would be the yellow, The evil person would be the red, if we're going to say there's evil, and the good person would be the green. Okay? I'm just saying, right?
They're not evil.
They're not really, exactly. So reds are more self-serving, and typically the way we work from a research perspective, for those people who care, the red people in the red primes, I want to talk about it like this, and I have to correct myself when I say red people. The red primes, right, aren't so green, right? They're green is they're typically, by research and by the numbers, their lowest color energy, right? Greens, right? Which means when we talk red, green, blue, yellow and stuff, it's rare to have a person with that kind of personality, a red, green. Chances are they're either red, blue or red, yellow, for the most part. Sometimes, and it's very rare, we're talking less than 5% of the population is red, green or green, red, right? And the reason for this is because it's just so weird, right? Red people really care about they're task-oriented, and green people are people-oriented. And sometimes red's got to do something where they may not make everyone happy. And that's in a direct conflict with the green personality, which says, no, but we have to make everyone happy. And it's hard to be both. Can it happen? Absolutely. Any combination is possible, right? And any level of color energy is possible as well. So it's hard to understand everybody. But again, it comes down to understanding yourself. Okay, from what you know right now, who would say you're a primary red personality? A person who's task-oriented. Don't be afraid, put up your hand, right? A person who's primary task-oriented, a person who cares about getting things done, right? Action-oriented. Anybody? I don't put my hand up. I'm a primary red, right? Because I'm all about getting tasks done, right? That's my thing. How about a primary blue? That's the most common one for programmers, I have to say, right? Primary blue is you're orderly, you're detail-oriented, you're more of an observer typically if you're primary blue. And how about green? Primary green is about involvement, caring. Primary green, right? What about the primary yellows out there? You haven't put your hand up at all. You have to put your hand up somewhere, right? Primary yellow. Who's more primary yellow? Right? Huh? He's not on board. It doesn't matter, right? Really, it doesn't matter because it's not my thing, man. I'm telling you, this is research, right? So if you don't believe in it, it's up to you.
Can we see the studies? Can we put those links up on Slack? Because this is not a thing. Like as far as I'm concerned.
It's a thing, man. It's a thing. I wouldn't teach it to you.
Studies.
Okay. I don't have it right now, but I will,
Okay, yeah.
right? But it is a thing. Why would I teach it to you? It's not a thing. Why would I waste your time and my time if it wasn't a
But
thing?
that's how school programs
No, man,
work.
then you don't understand. I'm a red, right? So if I'm going to teach it, right, it's because I need to teach it, right? So learn, it's going to be on the exam, right? I don't know what he is. I can tell you that
It's not self-help book stuff.
it's not a self-help book. This is understanding people in your team. This is what this is about. This topic, please, the context is not self-help. The context is how do I work within teams, understanding yourself and other people, identifying them, and communicating with them, which is the main thing. How do I communicate with different people, different kinds of personalities? And this is just a tool, that's all it is, on how to help you communicate with other people. It's not a way of subdividing the universe or anything like that. So don't take it that way. I like your grain of salt thinking. I like it. And I think we all should be critical. But I also think in this particular case, don't fight me on this one. Trust me. I'm not trying to sell you any bill of goods that's wrong, okay? Remember, this first started from Carl Jung, right, and Freud. They started, dividing, personality types. And if you took any psychology courses, they'll talk about those things. But that's not what this is about. We need to somehow use some kind of, develop empathy for other kind of people, even if they're very different from ourselves. And that's the message I want to bring today. It's not, I'm red and you're blue and we can't hang out. It's not like that, right? It's, hey, okay, I'm more red. I'm more action-oriented and task-oriented. And maybe someone else is more creative, a creative type. How do I talk to that person? Because creative types are the most difficult people to talk to sometimes because they're all over the place, right? All right. So let me talk about some points here. Now, if we can assume, please help me assume together. All right. Let's assume for a second that I'm right. Okay. That the system is valid. Okay. If we assume this, then for the most part, and I mean we've just outlined a few of the preferences that a red or a yellow or a blue or a green would have. For example, most reds have some of these. Either they're assertive or they're determined, they're confident. Those kind of things are more people who are red. If you're yellow, then you might be demonstrative or expressive, right? More artistic and innovative in general, if you're primary yellow. If you're primary blue, you might be more cautious and analytical and more of an observer type. And if you're a green type, then we're talking about someone who's a little bit more caring and patient and someone who wants to be inclusive, right? If I was gonna give you a real brief, like a real high level, street level kind of idea of what a red would be like, think about them as your typical directors in a company. Your typical innovators are yellow. Your creative types, your typical programmers are blue, and your green people are the people who really care about people, the HR people, the people who want to deliver recognition programs and all those kind of things. Now, remember, we're all colors, and the theory behind this system is we want to use something called the full brain. That means your team should be made up of different personalities with different primes, so that there's primarily only one red, primarily in a team. And I say this only because if you have too many, you might have fights. It might come down to like, and sometimes authority comes from legitimate authority, like that's his role. And sometimes people will fight you because they want to argue. They're an argumentative type, an A type personality, or a person who's a red. You don't want to have too many of each of these colors. And when we talk today, we're going to also be talking about agile methodology for project management. Teams of 4 to 6 are preferable when it comes to that size. Especially when we do indie studios and that kind of stuff. When we have a small team of people working on a problem, teams of 4 to 6 is the right number. Anything beyond that, the overhead is too high, and we're going to talk about that. And that's why you've been organized in teams of 4 to 6. Most of you have teams of 6. Some of you have problems with your team right now, but for the most part, teams of 4 to 6 is what we're organizing. Now, if you think about on a good day, this happens on a good day, right? Here's your good day. On a bad day, guys, please. I'm competing with you guys, and I can't compete, right? You guys are too loud. On a bad day, what happens is reds can be more aggressive and controlling and overbearing, and maybe greens would be more stubborn, and they're people that are, on a bad day, if a green's trying to do red, if they're trying to be aggressive, typically greens do red badly and reds do green badly. Like, for example, let's say a primary red is trying to give recognition to somebody. I'm a primary red. When I try and give recognition to somebody because I don't have the same sensitivity as an average green person, green prime, I don't do it. I get somebody else to do it. I get a green to do it. I get my wife to do it, right? She's better at buying presents for the kids than I am, right? Not because I don't love the kids. I love the kids. I just don't love them enough. Right? I just feel that I'm not a great person for recognition. She's better. She understands what they want more because she's more in tune with that, right? And if I need someone to analyze something, I can do analysis if I want to, right? But it's not my forte. Analysis is not my forte. I'll get somebody to do the analysis for me, the admin. All the admin work and all that kind of stuff. Blue people, the accountants and the programmers are great at doing that kind of stuff, right? And if I'm going to get an artist to work with me, I can do art if I need to, but it's not my primary function, right? So I'll get an artist to do it. There's nothing wrong with that, the delegating and separating work. Division of labor has always been something that we want to try and focus on in business. All right. When it comes to mixing up colors, you can sit there and go, well, I'm not a red or a blue, but maybe I'm a red-yellow as an example. And a red-yellow would be more someone who's more orange in this case, right? What mixes the colors together. So someone who's a more motivator. And you can see how I can go down here. Now, I'm not going to teach you all these terms. This is something that from a, from a categorization or if you want to categorize somebody or create an archetype for a personality, you can use these charts. This is not for us in this course. I'm including them so you can look at them. But what I want you to do is think about for yourself. If you're a red, right, and you're talking to a yellow, right, think about what a yellow personality is like. A primary yellow personality is more creative, right, more innovative. The yellow people, for the most part, over all the bodies are buried, they're the thieves and the people who are, the chaos comes from them a lot of times. I'm talking primary yellow again. Yellows that also have other colors inside them, because we all have every color, right? If I'm talking to a yellow, I know that they want to be included, right? Because that's their the idea behind it is that they want to be included and involve me as the yellow's model, right? For the blue person, if a red's talking to a blue, he knows, or he should know, or she should know, that the blue person is looking for step-by-step process. They're analytical process oriented people, right? They care about the process and doing it right, and what the process is to finish the project. So when I say here, do this task, they have a system or a process how to do this a lot of times. And most programmers do have a system, right? The green person is hard for red to speak to because they're so diametrically opposed with the average red prime's psychology, right? A green person wants to include everybody and be nice and whatever, and a red person just wants to get it done. A red person might give an order, and a green person might say, but what about these people? We're not going to include them. And the red person might say, well, we can't. We don't have a budget for it. And the green person, that won't sit well with the average green, right? So there could be these problems that arise in a group. That's why I'm bringing this up for you guys, right? Because part of what we're talking about is working together in a team. How do we deal with these problems, right? How do I communicate with different kind of personalities? Again, going back, this is going to be on your exam next week. What's the first thing you do? Identify yourself. Who are you? If you're going to self-identify, where would you see yourself? Now, we're trying to develop a language here, so please, again, play with me, okay? We're just developing a language. If I was going to play along and say that I'm a primary red and let's say a secondary yellow, right? How would I talk to somebody who is a green person? What would I do, right? How would I, maybe I'm going to get somebody who's got green in them, right? Someone who's a yellow-green, an extrovert, introvert, who knows how to speak, who has some sensitivity there, that's better at communicating with that green personality. Or maybe what I can do is adapt my way of thinking and then speak in a different way. Also, one thing to note is when you put your personalities all over the map and when they do your test, you cannot figure your personality out by what we're doing. We're getting a ballpark, an idea of who they are. Typically, there's an instrument that you would use. It's usually 80 to 100 questions, and you probably do this test a couple times to give an average. Again, the test is designed by psychologists, not by me. And what they would do is they would kind of give you your general energy levels, right? That's what this is. Now, again, this is one of, I would say, 5 or 6 different tools that exist when it comes to personality discovery. Only one of 6, right? The main one being Myers-Briggs, right? Which is the standard ENTJ, introverted thinking and so on, and MBTI. But this is not that. This is a way of us using colors as a mnemonic so we can develop our language when we speak to each other, right? That's what it's for. Again, this is going back many, many years. And it is something in the market that we use. It is in project management. You will see this kind of thing again, or something like it. If you do take a project management course, or a organizational behavior course, or anything like that, you will see some kind of personality test or personality profile that they will talk about. Okay, these are just extra information for you to look at if you're interested. It also details things about the red personality, the primary red, and we're talking about things like what style that they have. How to approach them when given a task, right? What's their approach? What value they give to the team and so on. Do I need you to memorize this or use this on the test? No. I just need you to know when we talk about insights personality that there's 4 colors and what these 4 colors mean. All right, so exercise. Think about your people in your team. What kind of personalities do you see without being told? If you're going to look at your partners in your team, and if you're using the system, and if you can believe for a second, if you suspend your disbelief for a second to believe that this is something we can use to help us categorize or understand other people. That's all it's for, right? What kind of personalities do we have in your team? Can you think about the personality mix that you have, and is there a potential conflict? Think about it, right? And also think about other people you know. Think about your parents or your girlfriends or your boyfriends or whatever. Your friends, your best friends, people that you hang out with all the time. What kind of personalities are they? For the most part, what we find is, you might say, well, I'm attracted to the opposite type. Opposites attract. And that's really short term. If you're a young person, you might find that works for you, right? But later in life, studies have shown that you want to mix with someone who's similar to you in terms of goal, whatever your goals are, and what your your general personality preferences are. And what I mean by that is if you're a primary red, yellow, and you're dealing with someone who's a double extrovert, and you're dealing with someone who's a double introvert, and you might be attracted to them, in the beginning it might be something that you can work out, but later on they say that there could be more stress related to trying to understand them and them trying to understand you, right? So the same thing goes on with your team. You might have someone in your team who's completely diametrically opposed in personality type to yourself, which could cause stress, right? So how would you deal with that person? How would you, is there a person who's resistant? Is there a person who, who doesn't produce? And are they using kind of a passive aggressive way of doing that? Like not, remember the producers in the team, you don't have no power, right? You can't go to the other person and say, you're doing it, right? He's not going to listen potentially, right? So even if you're a red personality and you say, okay, I want to get this person to do it, they may not, right? Even as a professor, do I really have power to make you do something? If you don't really want to study in the exam, you don't have to, right? I'm going to put it on there, right? If you don't want to, I can't make you learn anything. You can't motivate anybody in real life. There's no motivation. People who talk motivation to, innovation, all that stuff. Innovation and motivation comes in from inside, right? So someone who wants to, what?
There is motivation.
There's no motivation. You're motivated on your own. If you don't want to, just no matter what I tell you to do, inspiration, I can inspire you, right? The most I can do is someone can inspire you, but motivation comes from yourself. I can't give you motivation. You motivate yourself. And that's a proven fact, right?
So there's
So-
zero.
No, I say I can't motivate you. You can motivate yourself. You motivate
The
yourself.
only motivation is within.
Absolutely. And the reason for that is
Can't be
because
motivated by other people.
you can feel motivated by other people. People can motivate you. You can be inspired by others, right? You can be someone can help you create an environment. What?
It's splitting hairs.
At the end of the day, it comes down to if you're interested, if you're passionate for something, then you're going to be motivated. That's what it comes down to. So people can create an environment where you feel passionate about working in that environment. And so you can be motivated. And there's other quote unquote motivators. And if we look at, I hate to say this, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you want to go there, right? It really talks about motivation in terms of basic needs first. So I need to take care of my house and have a place to sleep and all that kind of stuff. That's motivation. I have to pay my bills. And then the other parts, as you go up the pyramid, you get less and less worried about things that are basic needs and into things like prestige. I get motivated because I want to have a nice car. I get motivated because I want self-actualization. I want to understand myself, or kind of create something that's beyond something that I would normally produce, something that challenges me, right? But typically, yeah, I would say that motivation comes from inside. And that means that if you think you can motivate somebody else by going to them and talking to them and motivate them, it may not work. Even if they say, yeah to your face, they may not be motivated at all. You don't know. All right, so that's it for this. I just wanted to bring this up because we need to understand, how to deal with other people. And maybe when I say deal with other people, like talk to them, communicate with them, think about what they need, compared to what you need. One of the things that we always talk about as well is this idea that, do unto others as you would like to be done to you. But that's also been proven kind of wrong because you want to do unto them like as they would want to be done to them, right? Like, for example, I don't know, you might think for yourself that I like it this way, so therefore my friend over here likes it the way I like it. If I wouldn't do it, then he wouldn't like it. That's wrong. He might like it, right? Or she might like it. You have to understand what they want, what they need, not necessarily what you want or you need. All right, questions around this. This is just a tool, again. That's why I'm bringing it up. We're talking about teamwork and team building. Again, what I'm going to ask you on the exam is a few simple questions, nothing too crazy around this, but it's around how to discuss things, how to communicate with other people. That's what this tool is about. Any questions around this? You guys can ask your questions. Nothing?
Are we doing a profile thing or not?
No, you're not doing a profile. Of course not. This is not that kind of course. This is not an organizational behavior course or a psychology course. This is a course where we talk about it and we use it as a tool. Yes. Is
Do
that
you
a
feel
hand?
like your board has a color? Or like
I'm what?
change your color? Like there's like 4 colors. Like,
Yeah.
are you just born as that color and then that's the way you're gonna be for the rest of your life?
Well, that's a good question. I like that question. And goes back to if you were going to think about a personality, is it nature versus nurture, that whole discussion, right? I think some of it comes from there. I think some of it comes from you being born that way. I know that I have 4 kids, and every one of them has different personality. They grow up in the same household, right? So did I grow as I was teaching them, as I was nurturing them, as I was doing things? Sure. So things changed, certainly, but they all have their own personality coming out. Like, I mean, even from babies, right? Can you be nurtured into something like that when you're young? Absolutely. I think there's influences, things that can influence you to change who you are. But one thing we talked about in the earlier session today is that many people don't change too much. When you see somebody and you think that they have potential to change, chances are they're not changing. Not for you, not for anybody, not even for themselves, right? It's a hard reality, and that's my anecdotal opinion. All right, if you're gonna, I'm not going to give you research for that, but for the most part, the thing that I've observed in my life is that people don't change. You may think that you might have potential or hope for that they're going to change, but let's face it, we can hardly change ourselves, right? Who we are is pretty much who we stay through the greater portion of our life, especially after probably 9 or 10. Later on, and I got to talk about the wheel a little bit here. People who score closer to the middle of the wheel, where they have more of a balanced type of personality, there's two possibilities for that. One is they're mature. They understand how to be a chameleon. They know how to shift, kind of change their personality types, their styles, communication styles, the way they present themselves, and so on, depending on the group that they're hanging out with. The other possibility is that they don't know who the hell they are, right? It's also possible, like when they're very young. We tend to think, well, I'm kind of every color, right? But it's not true. And the people who are on the outside of the wheel typically are the people who are more extreme, right? So they're more extreme personalities. Like I'm really red, I'm really aggressive, and I don't care what you say, that kind of thing. Or I'm really yellow and I love to party and I don't like to do anything else, right? And that's rare too. Like people way on the edges of the wheel or really closer to the middle of the wheel, like in the center. They're different kind of people. All right, so any change at all? So think about this. When you look at this, the wheel, if you're gonna look at yourself, first of all, again, it's understanding who you are. We're gonna talk about personality type. Are you a blue? Are you a red? Are you a green? Are you a yellow prime? And then what's your secondary color? Those two things you should probably think about, right? Again, as long as you're not skeptical, right? You can kind of think about it. This is just a system to understand, right? Is it 100% accurate? No, but they say it's 96% accurate. And the second thing is, once you understand yourself, okay, cool. How do I communicate with the people that I see? What do I see? How do I identify those people? And the first thing that I would always do is, are they an extrovert? Are they an introvert? Take a look at those things first, extrovert, introvert. If they're extrovert, they're going to be talkative more often. They're going to be people who are more argumentative if they're red. They're going to be more, social if they're yellow, and so on, typically. And if they're not, they're probably into the blue or green primaries, right? And then are they organized or disorganized? How do you see them? How do they dress? How do they, and again, these are all, you might say, stereotypes. But we do that all the time. We analyze and we make judgments constantly, instantly, when we see people. We like them or we don't, for the most part. Now, some people are very mature and they don't do those things, right? But for the most part, when we look at somebody, we make judgments immediately, right? And some of those judgments that we make, right, are based on our own personality types. All right, so team building, how do we do that? So again, takeaways from this one, right, is think about your team. Think about the kind of personalities. How are you going to communicate with someone? If you're a producer, how can I communicate with my team to get what I need done, right? How can I communicate with somebody who's diametrically opposed in character to me, right? Because you may not like everybody on your team, right? You may not like your professors either, by the way, right? They may rub you the wrong way. I mean, it just may happen, right? Yeah. The number one way to get along with people is understand what they need. So, professor, what do they need? When I'm in school, I always think to myself, okay, so what does this professor need? What does he want? What is he really looking for? If you can figure that out, it increases the chance of you being successful in that course, right? What does that person need? The person that's sitting next to you, the person that's in your team, what do they need? What do they want, right? If you can figure that out, that's fantastic. And it's the same thing when it comes to sales or pretty much anything else. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to stop this one. Let's take a 10-minute break. When we come back, there is a Lab 5 that I've put up on Blackboard. What it is a little reflection exercise. A couple weeks ago, before I was away last week, right, there was a video that I asked you to watch, right, which is how to make things juicy, right? Some people may have found it interesting. Some people may have found it boring. But one thing they talked about there in the video was hey, how do I add spunk to something like a breakout game? What do I do to make it interesting? And they did a bunch of things to make it interesting. For your exercise, when you come back to the break, I want you to think about how this relates to your game. How can I use some of these techniques that they talked about to make my game more interesting, right? There's some techniques, particle effects, screen shake, a bunch of other stuff to make it more interesting, to make it more attractive, to the stuff here. So that's the exercise. So the reflection exercise with you, with the team. Make sure that you put people that are physically here today on the on your little document. It only has to be 1 or 2 paragraphs, nothing too crazy or taxing. Some people even put bullet points. I'm okay with that, right? Just as long as you do this little reflection exercise based on the video. You may want to look at the video again. Any questions for me before we break? All right, let's take a 10-minute break and then come back.